that might put a damper on the market at some point.
Again, everybody, welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us each and every day here. And we're going to be talking about conditions in South America. It's our weekly update with Matthew Kruse, the president of Comstock Investments, and he joins us actually from the U.S. today. Welcome back, Matthew. Hope you had a good trip.
Yeah, I made it back. I caught a little bit of a bug, I think, on the way there. The plane ride was kind of cold, but uh, yeah, I'm good to be back. Get some cold weather.
So give us a little bit of a comparison. What was it like when you left there weather-wise?
Oh, it was upper 80s for most of the time period that I was there, in the afternoon. So it's just the only variance really was if it rained or there was sun. So
All righty. Well, you had a chance to do some traveling around the country, I know, and you had a chance to visit with some people. So I'm anxious to hear what you actually had to share from your travels down there. I think you also have some weather graphics that we can take a look at here as far as what the weather patterns are moving into that part of the world. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here. And we'll start with a look at, I guess this would be for this coming week. Is this right?
yeah, this is basically the 1 week precipitation outlook. And we're right in the middle of a weather rally. It seems like we're up sharply today. It's not the close, but March beans are up 15 and March corn's up 10 and a quarter. And so I think just a lot of it has to do with we're going back and forth trading the weather, and the harvest is in Brazil is starting out delayed. I think overall they're at 3% complete with the harvest, and usually they're closer to at least 10% complete at this time. And so the market is starting to take notice of that. I still think that there's time for them to get caught up. I'd point out that when part of the reason the harvest is delayed, to be honest, is because the crop is so good that it really hasn't felt hardly any stress, especially in the northern tier of Brazil. And so when it can, extends its growing season like that, usually means it's filling out those top pods on the soybeans. And so you should be expecting a big crop coming. There's areas that's obviously the market's focusing more on today in Rio Grande do Sul in the south, and then of course Argentina. And so they did get some rains there, some scattered showers of an inch in a lot of those areas, but I think the market kind of shrugged it off just because it's been so hot. And now we're right back into the next week. Looks like there's going to be little to no precipitation. And so every couple of days I go back and look at some of these maps. They seem to change a little bit, and so it's hard to get a grasp on what's actually happening. So that's kind of why we're seeing the volatility that we are in the markets right now.
Now, this particular map would be another couple of weeks out. Is that right? Or 10
So this
days
one,
out?
yeah, this one goes out a little bit longer to February 14th, and it's more of an anomaly, not what actual precipitation amounts are going to be, but just general levels above or below the average. And you kind of see it flip-flops actually the longer you get out to February, where northern part of Brazil tends to lean drier. It doesn't mean it's not getting any rain. It just means it's leaning drier. And then you have the southern part of Brazil is leaning wetter. And so what that tells me here is that this kind of weather event, is probably going to run out of gas here soon, where the areas that are going to need rain in the southern part of the country here are going to get something. How much is hard to say yet. And then the areas to the north that are delayed because of getting so much rain, the skies are going to start to open up a little bit here. And so heading into that perhaps the second week of February, things will kind of let off and allow the harvest to catch up. But between now and then, the market is concerned about these delays, and until we get closer and get more confirmation, it's going to continue to add those weather premiums in the market.
All right. Now we have another graphic here. Percentage of soybean area planted to safrinha corn. Now we're not talking soybeans here. We're talking corn. Now,
Yeah.
last time you and I spoke, they were already starting to plant in the north, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're 3% done with soybean harvest, they're, arguably close to 3% complete with the safrinha corn being planted. And so, my focus is already starting to shift from, how is the bean crop doing to what's the condition of the second crop corn planting and how that's looking at. And so I just thought this image was interesting just to give people an idea of where some of that second crop corn is coming from. It's not coming from Rio Grande do Sul in the south. It gives you an idea of what percentages are taking place from the soybean crop to what's being planted to the corn. And so in the case of Mato Grosso, which is the largest, what this is saying is that 54% of soybean acres go to second crop corn. And so they're not planting 100%, which I think a lot of people have that mistaken idea is that, everything's going to that. And that's kind of a long-term concern. Who's to say that in ideal conditions they couldn't plant more? Just kind of shows the potential that's there, that they're getting this big crop and they aren't even planting all of their acres to second crop corn. And in the case of Paraná, they're in the south at 41%. So it's 41% of their soybean acres get planted to corn. And they're the second largest soybean producer, usually between Paraná and Rio Grande do Sul. And so you kind of see how it's spread out, but it's pretty heavily concentrated in that center west region of Brazil. And I'm actually, I realize that the soybean market is rallying here. Long term, I'm more concerned about the corn market actually because of this lateness. I think they'll get the soybean crop out. They just need some dry weather to take place. But I think their window for getting that corn crop in is very narrow, and they're going to run out of time here real quick. And that's going to, longer term, it's going to reduce potential for yield on their corn and potentially even, de-incentivize growers to want to plant as many corn acres.
How much overlap is there in the growing season from their safrinha corn crop to when they harvest compared to when we start planting here in the U.S.? I mean, are they pretty much butted up against each other? Do they overlap a month or two?
Some of the early ones, the bulk of it is probably taking place in June and July for their second crop corn harvest. Some of the early ones that get planted in January, they can be doing that harvest in May, but the bulk of it is going to take place in June and July, I think. And so the majority of it gets planted in February in Brazil. And so, yeah, it's they're several months earlier than we are.
Now, do they export a lot of their second crop corn, their safrinha corn, or is a lot of it used for things like ethanol?
Yeah, we're really, our U.S. crop is competing more with their second crop because predominantly their entire first crop of corn is used domestically. And then their second crop is what is their biggest crop. It represents, I want to say, like 78% of their overall corn production. And that's what's, has been exported as their excess. And it's down quite a bit. Their estimates are down this year from last year, where they actually surpassed U.S. corn exports for the first time ever, almost, maybe excluding the drought year in 2012. But now they've fallen back quite a bit because they've reduced their corn acres. I think they've tempered their yield expectations a little bit. But probably more importantly, their domestic consumption has really taken off, and a lot of that's due to their increase in the corn ethanol plants that are being built actively in Brazil and is consuming more corn, which means they have less that available to export. So I think, off the top of my head, I want to say they're at like 55 million metric tons that they exported last year, and then now they're expected something close to 35 million metric tons. So it's a pretty big swing, 20 million metric tons lower from one year to the next.
How do they typically produce on average, yield-wise, compared to U.S. farmers here?
It's like almost half. It's not like what you expect in the United States. And so our latest USDA yield estimate for our last year's crop average was just under 180 bushels per acre. I don't even think their overall national yield breaks 100. Now, generally their better yields come from their first crop. They have a longer growing season and might invest more in it. But their second crop corn yields are what we would consider to be quite low. 100 bushels per acre is pretty normal. Now, there are some cases, those that plant earlier, give the crop more time to develop and get more precipitation, could do 120, 130 bushels per acre. But the stuff that's planted later could do 60 or 70 bushels per acre. And so overall, their average is probably closer to 90 bushels per acre, to be honest. And so that's what's odd, is you should almost look at it more. It's not their cash crop, right? You should look at it more as a rotational crop. Their soybeans are their cash crop. And it's just kind of worked out that, if we rotate corn, our next year's soybean crop will be that much better. That's how a lot of them look at it. So it's even worth doing it, even knowing that they're going to just break even on that corn, just because they believe that their soybeans the following year will do that much better. Now, obviously, they like to make money with it. The costs have gone up exponentially as well for those second crop corn. But that's kind of how they look at that situation.
So why would that be? Are their soils that light? Do they plant that thin of a population, or what contributes to that?
Several things. A lot of it's just the seed technology. It has improved a lot, but they don't have a lot of the seed technology that we do. I don't think that they aren't putting, maybe a full ration of phosphorus and potassium like we are. Some cases they aren't putting anything out there, and so they don't invest in as much of it because they know they have those limitations. And part of it's just because they know they're not maybe going to get a full season of rainfall, depending on when they get things planted. Now, if I know I'm going to get it planted earlier in January, I might be willing to do more, put more fungicide applications out there, those types of things that I know could add yield. But some producers, and there's still a significant amount, gets planted in early March, which they know at that point it's there's a high risk of yield loss planting it that late, and so they're going to invest the minimum amount possible in those yields. And so I think that's a big part of it. A lot of them will just put nitrogen on and for fertilizer, and that's perhaps it.
Do they even have very much farm storage, though? Is that a problem? I mean, if they did have high yields,
it's a big problem. Brazil as a whole probably, I think, is like 15% has on farm storage capacity, and in a lot of that gets used up by the soybeans, of course. And so there's really nothing left over for the corn. A lot of farmers just leave it out in the field, and they know they're gonna have yield loss just from the drying effect. If moisture levels drop from 14% to 9% or 8%, but that's cheaper compared to where am I going to store this corn? I don't have any place to put it. And so they just shut off the combine, wait to make another sale, and then the buyer sends the trucks out. Okay, now let's start up the combines and go somewhere. I still see a lot of that down there. And so, yeah, it's a very different mindset than what we have here, where it's go at harvest. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but you certainly see some of that still to this day.
Well, I know in the past we have talked about the difference between the U.S. and the Brazilian economies. We kind of touched on it before about how Argentina's economy is really turning around. Didn't know if you had any updates on things taking place in Argentina these days or not.
Oh yeah, Argentina is made a dramatic reversal in the last year. A year ago we were talking about how they had the 200% inflation, and things were out of control. But since then, their new president Milei has come in and cut a lot of costs and government, reduced the size of their government, and that's really changed things. Inflation has come down to maybe not U.S. levels, but more single digits, which is maybe doesn't sound all that impressive to us. But when you were facing 200% inflation a year ago, it's a night and day difference. And because of that, that their balance sheets have started to improve, and they've started to reduce their export tax on agricultural products. In Argentina is known for this, that their ag products that they export have long time been taxed, and that's been a major source of government revenue. And so the fact that they reduced that, now maybe it's just temporary, we don't know, but just went into effect now going through this summer, that like in the case of soybeans, they reduced that tax from 33% to 26%. I know before we started this interview, Marlin, you pointed out the misspelling in the previous. Supposed to say previous, not pervious, but that's I won't take credit for that. This came right from the USDA's report, and so it falls right in line with the quality of their work that we've seen here and their yield estimates, and now they're misspelling things in their reports too. So
Yeah, they've had better years for accuracy than they did in 2024. Well, looking through there, I mean, that's a significant drop on quite a few of them. I mean, you're talking a lot of money here.
well, yeah, and I don't know how much difference it's going to make in the short term, but long term, I think the thinking is that it will, that money will get transferred to the farmer and kind of improve their profitability, which would then incentivize them to want to plant more.
And they're well known, of course, for their soybean meal production in Argentina. And I see on the second line, it says soybean byproducts there. That's a big drop in the export tax on that. So that's right in their wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
All right. So now that you're back home, what are you going to be focusing on now?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're kind of enjoying this rally here in the markets, and we took advantage of this rally and cleaned up our old crop sales, and now we're just kind of looking to see what targets are to the upside. I think it looks like it's highly correlated to what's going on in South America, and so I don't think it's going to last forever. In that case, eventually they're going to get the crop out and get the corn crop in, and so that might put a damper on the market at some point, but it looks like March corn at least still wants to go and retest that high of 508 in the March corn, which, that goes back to, I think, May of last year. And so it's been a long time coming, come a long way yet, but the new crop is still kind of dragging. We're at pulling back a little bit now. New crop's at 465. And so that's right. Maybe where break even is, I think, for a lot of producers at 460 area. If you have a negative basis along those areas, you're still not quite at profitable levels. And so I'm hoping we can get some more steam here behind these markets, get closer to $5 a new crop before we give us a chance of real profitability going forward.
Well, now we hope you can get all rested up. And the next big event is going to be the Family Farm Masterclass coming up in Des Moines in February. That'll be on the 21st and 22nd. Not that far away anymore. And I know you have a big role to play in that. We got some big keynote speakers coming in. So looking forward to that. And that should happen about the same time as the big Ag Outlook Forum. There should be plenty to talk about.
That's right. Yeah. Encourage people to come. We're excited for this event. I think those that have come to it in the past have spoken very highly of it and felt like they really got a lot out of it. There's not a lot of events of this type that are out there, that we focus on corporate governance and succession planning and really get into different case studies and to kind of help give ideas to some of those larger operators as they expand and add more people and bring in the next generation. And I know a lot of those are difficult discussions for different operations to have. And so, but you aren't going to make any progress, by avoiding it. And so we're trying to just create an educational opportunity. Of course, we focus on other things too. We'll give an update on market outlook for 2025 going forward as well.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And if anybody has any questions about what's going to be taking place at that event, you can just go to Comstock.com website, 2 M's, COMMSTOCK.com. And when you get to the homepage, up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a link. It says Masterclass. Just click on that. You can see who all the speakers are, what the agenda is, accommodations. You can actually make accommodations through the links on there. So, yeah, we look forward to seeing everybody there. It should be a big event, and we're looking forward to it. All right, Matthew, I'll let you rest your voice, and thanks again for joining us for an update on South America. I appreciate that. Matthew Kruse, president of Comstock Investments, with us today. That'll do it for this episode. And for Brianne Jenkins, our producer, I'm Marlin Bohling. We hope to catch you next time right here on the Comstock channel. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.